this is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law.
Hey, welcome to the broadcast, everyone. Our television audience is with us, and we're thrilled they are. Jordan's in our studios in Washington, D.C. You've got this increased hostility towards Jewish students in the United States on major university campuses. We've handled 2 cases in just the last couple of weeks, one in California, one in Illinois. We got them both resolved successfully. We're taking action on this to end this discrimination, and we want you to sign on this petition at aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255. We're very fortunate to have on the phone with us right now a good friend, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who's got a book out called A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. He's been on Fox News. No, I think you're on Fox News more than I am, and I'm on a pretty good bit there, Dr. Jasser. So, it's great having you, Zuhdi. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's great to be with you, and you paved the path for me, so thank you.
All right. Let me ask you first about the president's statement as it relates to what is happening with ISIS. What is happening also in a situation which I think this in France calling these random acts. Tell me about your reaction to this as someone of faith who is trying to challenge your own faith community to get its act together.
Yeah, the definition of a phobia is an irrational fear of the unknown. So from an American perspective, if you really believe that there is such a thing as Islamophobia, which I disagree with as a concept, but if you believe that, then you have to name it to begin to take away the shroud of fear of that which doesn't exist. More importantly, though, as a Muslim and looking at global security, if you want reformists to fix the problem within the House of Islam, the only way you can enable us is to identify it as an ideology, political Islam. And ultimately, if we're going to reform and modernize and have a movement against theocracy and what I call the new evil empire, which is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, it's wholly absurd for the president to say the Islamic State is not Islamic, and yet the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Saudi government, which is a theocracy, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, all these governments with draconian apostasy and anti-blasphemy laws that treat minorities in ways because of Sharia law, do it under the name of Islam, and yet we don't call them on it. So to say it's not Islam is not only denial, but if you say where's the voices of reform, the biggest obstruction to that is Western leaders like President Obama that don't engage the reformers. And while he was hugging the new king of Saudi Arabia, that government was whipping Muslims like me, like Raif Badawi. And Natan Sharansky had a great piece in the Post last week and said, we need to go back to what we did against the Soviets and begin to identify prisoners of conscience who are getting whipped for insulting Islam. And it almost seems like we're doing the same blasphemy laws in America.
Let me ask you this, Zuhdi. You head up the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, AIFdemocracy.org. You've got, as I said, a great book out called A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. And then we've got the situation that I know you're aware of with this boycott, divestiture, and sanctions scheme that's reaching a fevered pitch against Jewish students, but also Israeli institutions on American public schools campuses. What's your sense of where this is coming from?
It's coming from a Islamist movement that groups like CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which started as a Hamas offshoot in Washington, was the Islamic Association of Palestine, and then couldn't get a constituency large enough, so it broadened it to the global Islamic community, and now works closely with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They feed these types of movements in order to claim victimization, and they have an all-too-willing audience at the leftist universities that want to demonize Israel. The saddest thing is to see these BDS movements that there was a video a couple of weeks ago where a student held up an ISIS flag at Berkeley, and nobody really paid much attention to it, and he was waving it. Then he held up a flag of Israel, our ally, the only democracy in the Middle East,
right.
And he was sworn at, things were thrown at him, and it was just so much hate. So the demonization of our ally, we see this now with Netanyahu coming to speak to Congress. To say that a foreign leader cannot speak to our halls of Congress, our members, is just absurd. And the BDS movement is the tip of the spear of the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, the new anti-Semitism, if you will, movement in American schools.
Dr. Jasser, we appreciate it. Zudi, thank you for being on the broadcast. Thank you for being a reasoned voice also in this debate. I really have enjoyed getting to know you and watching you. We're going to be focusing. We have a program at Oxford University. I'm going to email you offline here where we do deal with a lot of these issues. I want to get you over there to lecture to the lawyers come in from all over and public policy people all over the world. The book is A Battle for the Soul of Islam. It's by Dr. Zudi Jasser, who I think is the most rational voice out in the country right now on these topics. Thanks for being with us again. We appreciate it, Zudi.
God bless. I really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And folks, Jordan, you've interviewed Zudi a lot. He is the reformer in that movement.
That's right. And, he'll be very honest when he talks about if you ask him about the more voices and, that he has to, it's what he does very dangerous. It's patriotic by speaking out and going against the grain, not being afraid to speak out and do so. And he's trying to encourage more people to do the same thing.
He called it the new anti-Semitism. The scripture says in Genesis, I will bless those that bless thee, talking about Israel, curse those that curse thee. That's the scriptural admonition. I want you to bless the Jewish students in American public school campuses, the Israeli professors. You could do that by signing this petition right now at aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. I'm going to urge you to sign on to that petition today as we're crossing 85,000 signatures on our way to 100,000. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255 to end discrimination against Jews, for that matter for Christian students as well, on these campuses around the country. aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Back with more in a moment.
There's a disturbing development occurring at our nation's colleges and universities. Jewish students are under attack on America's campuses. In California, Muslim students chant Allah Akbar at Jewish students at an open meeting. In Chicago, Jewish students need police protection from pro-Palestinian students. Nazi symbols are painted on a Jewish fraternity. Radical professors pledge to boycott Israel scholars and punish Jewish students. Our universities are overrun with anti-Israel propaganda. At the ACLJ, we're fighting for Jewish students on campus, winning cases and stopping boycotts. But it's time the Obama administration stepped up. It's time the Obama administration's Department of Education enforced the law to protect American Jews from violence, intimidation, and unlawful discrimination. Add your name to our petition now. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or add your name online, aclj.org.
We have a brand new movie that's going to be coming out called Let My People Go. It's about persecution of Christians around the globe. Take a look at this preview.
Our dad used to be here swinging us in circles, and that was that's our favorite part. My favorite page is this one because my dad's holding me and it's been a long time since he did.
Religious persecution is a situation where your life is literally put in jeopardy simply because of what you believe.
I use the term religious cleansing now because it's the eradication of the entire Christian presence in country after country.
Every successive movement is becoming more vicious, more barbaric, and more savage than the previous one.
People are being killed because of their faith.
The level of persecution is on the rise. It's being reported more, we're seeing it, and we can see the imagery, we can see the brutality.
It's like it's open season on Christians.
Asia Bibi is a Christian woman on death row. She's been in prison in Pakistan since 2009.
Pastor Youssef Nader Khani was an Iranian Christian pastor, and he was in prison because of his work as a Christian.
Suddenly this group appears. This group who wants to slaughter all of our people.
New concerns for the safety of American pastor Saeed Abedini, sentenced this week to 8 years in Iran's most brutal prison, accused of illegally practicing his Christian faith.
They kept coming to the computer and saying, "Mommy, can we see Daddy? Can we hear his voice?" And I had to tell them that he was in prison because he loved Jesus.
I love him so much. I love him and take good care of him and don't let him die and bring him home safely. Amen.
Don't forget us. We're your brothers and sisters. I say to you, please don't leave us. We need you.
We've got a situation right now in the United States of America that should be something we should not have to deal with. And that is this rise of anti-Semitism. There's a huge rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, but there is a rise of anti-Semitism in the United States on Americans' public university campuses and some of the private ones as well, where Jewish students are treated not only discriminatorily, harassed to the point of needing police protection, defamed, given eviction notices, fake eviction notices from their dorms, saying just like you have done to the Palestinians, we are doing to you at the New York University of all places. And who are the students? Do these students that are causing these problems get in any trouble? No. Who are the ones that get written up and have to go through disciplinary proceedings? The Jewish students. And the ACLJ is there to defend them. And we could not do that without you. For that, we're grateful. And that's, again, why we want you to sign on to this petition at aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. Jordan, this anti-Israel bias on Americans' public university campuses and private universities as well has reached, I really think it's epidemic proportions. And as Zuhdi Jasser said in the last program, he's absolutely correct. This is coming from groups like the Organization for the Islamic Conference.
That's right. And CARE and groups in the United States with ties to organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood that have, again, this idea that rallying together, it's okay to paint a certain group of people with this kind of hate, with this kind of anger, with the aggressiveness, with the nastiness. And again, you flip the tables here. What are these Jewish groups causing? I mean, honestly, think about how bold it is for these Islamic student groups to be acting this way when people under their religion, using their faith, are slaughtering people, crucifying people, cutting the heads off of people. All over the world, there's this problem of Islamic terrorism, and yet their strategy is to blame the Jews and try not to get too much media coverage, and again, silence this voice. You think about how bold they're being at a time when their religion should be under the most scrutiny.
It's like they get a pass and everybody's afraid to speak out. And when the Jewish students speak out, they're the ones getting charged with the disciplinary proceedings here. And Christian students that are backing up their Jewish friends are also getting called into this. So what we're doing is defending those students, by the way, folks, from coast to coast. Well, let's go right back to our phones. Jordan, who do we have next?
Stephen's calling in from Indiana on line 5. Stephen, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live.
Hi, Stephen.
Yes, how you all doing?
Good.
My point is this here, okay? God told Abraham that he would make he and his wife into a mighty nation. That nation is Israel today.
Correct.
Now, concerning the issue at hand, concerning the Quran, you know, it says a surah, and they're talking about they shall not behold the beauty of Jerusalem. But here it is. But the Jews and the Arabians, the Arabians are half brothers and sisters of the Jews.
Right.
Now, the fact of the matter is this. Satan has worked so to get some people that to call themselves Muslims and be against Israel, but I couldn't deny any of my kin. You know what I'm saying? Because
but you're taking the familiar from the Bible, which is fine, and you're dealing it to the geopolitical situation right now. The Israel hatred among the Palestinian Authority and certainly among remember they're in partnership, Stephen, with Hamas. So while the Palestinian Authority, the Fatah Party as it's called, is considered to be the more moderate of the group, the fact of the matter is they're in partnership with a group that are terrorists. And Jordan, Hamas, and we've dealt with this both in court and in our work in Israel, these are terrorists of the kin of ISIS. I mean, that's what you're dealing with there.
That's right, and they find sympathizers inside the university system, inside the left. You know, there's the bizarre coalescence of the groups that come together for and are okay with these Palestinian causes, the activist liberal groups, a lot of groups, to put it mildly, that would not do well living under an Islamist government,
right,
and would not be treated well, but yet somehow, because it's the cool thing to be anti-Israel, it's the cool thing to be to support this divestment and boycotting and sanctions, that these groups come together. And yet these are groups that, if you look at the human rights record, the basic human rights record, look what happens when Islamists take power. It's a horrifying situation for minorities of all kinds of stripes, whether it's religious minorities, ethnic minorities, women, and so you go on and on down the list. There's no freedom of speech. There's no freedom of association. There's no freedom of religion.
No, and in fact, some of these groups that are marching with him, as you said, as soon as they got into power, they would be the first groups to be executed. But look what's happening to Jewish students on campus right now. So according to the Anti-Defamation League, during last academic year, student groups hosted 374 anti-Israel events. That's about 40% of which focus on how effectively to initiate a boycott, divestment, and sanction scheme against Israeli companies or Israeli faculty. 2,000 students at NYU received mock eviction notices in their dorms by Social Justice for Palestine students saying, this is how you treated our people in Palestine. We're doing the same to you. UCLA voted for divestment. UC Davis, you had a pro-Palestinian group shouting at the pro-Israel students, Allah Akbar. One of the students posted on Facebook, Hamas and Sharia law have taken over UC Davis. If a movement is not controversial, if no one is mad, it's not strong enough and it's not worth the fight. Israel will fall, inshallah. This is what the students are posting. So this is, understand the nature of what these young people and these young adults are facing on their college campuses. It's unprecedented. It's the rise of anti-Semitism to levels we saw right at World War II. And we have to speak out, you and I. So I'm going to encourage you to sign that petition now. Join with over 83,000 signatures. We're going to get to 100,000 here. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255. And I think it would be great for you to add your name to a chorus of 83,000 others. Let's go right back to the phones.
Crystal's calling in from Pennsylvania on line 1. Crystal, welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. You're on the air.
Hi, Crystal.
Thank you. Hello, Jay.
Hi.
I'm a stern supporter of the ACLJ and also of Israel.
Great.
And, I'm not a Jew by blood, but I am through spirituality.
Sure.
I am amazed that in America we allow this type of hatred and discrimination to go on in our country, while at the same time, when something happens to a Muslim or an Arab of some kind, it's an outcry and it's called a hate crime. And I don't dispute that it may be. But
you had that situation at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill 2 days ago where 3 Muslim students were killed, and it did not get a lot of press, and it should have, because that was, to me, an act of terrorism. This guy was supposedly a radical atheist and was mad at these Muslim students. But the fact of the matter is, it's not just a crime, it's a targeted execution is what that was. So you're absolutely right, Crystal. But it right now it appears in America, Jordan, and Crystal, let me ask Crystal this. You get the sense, Crystal, that if there's discrimination against Jews, basically, it's not worthy of, it's not your position, but this is what you're feeling. No one wants to talk. Nobody really cares.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody acknowledges it.
Right.
It doesn't hit the news.
You're right.
Everybody acts like that's okay.
Yeah. This targeted anti-Semitism, it's just like it was, in a sense, where you have this undercurrent of it developing, but nobody is saying, Crystal brought up a good point, no one's willing, we're talking about it, we're glad the stations we're on we could talk about it, but a lot of stations are not talking about this.
No, and it has to be to a point. To combat this, you have to make it unacceptable. It's not that these students are not going to be able to use freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. They'll love utilizing our rights and rules under our system to bring it down. That's their strategy is to use the Western legal system and the Western rights that are granted to people to take their message. And of course, they don't keep those rights if they are victorious, if they carry the day under Sharia law. There's no freedom of speech. There's no freedom of expression. There's no protesting. There's no getting up front, at these student group meetings and shutting things down. That's not acceptable. It's up to the Islamic authorities to decide what you can and can't do, and that's it. But under our system, to utilize, abuse, and take advantage of every possible legal option available is exactly what these groups are doing. Now, what's our responsibility? Call it out. Make sure that they are publicized so that these students who are doing this and the groups behind it are exposed.
Well, I think the reality is, and that you're seeing this, we're starting to get this kind of reaction. But, folks, this is where you've got to be educated. You've got to be informed. You've got to be updated. Make sure you're getting the email alerts from the ACLJ. Make sure you've liked us on Facebook. I have a page. Jordan has a page. The ACLJ has a page. Even the band has a page. So we encourage you to do that as well. Our book, Rise of ISIS, is #1 right now on the topic of Syria, terrorism, and Middle East affairs on on Amazon.com. So it's a book that's having some ramifications, and people have read it. We appreciate that, and people are being educated. And that's the biggest battle here. We come back from the break. We're taking more of your phone calls, so you're going to want to stay tuned. As I said, we are really concerned about this rise of anti-Semitism on our public colleges and even some of the private universities as well, folks. And we've got to speak out for these Jewish students that are being harassed simply because they're Jewish or pro-Israel. And we need you to join with now over 83,000 signatures online alone. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. I urge you to make that call, ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. Look, this is a real fight out there. I mean, this is the undercurrent of anti-Semitism is reaching a fevered pitch in the academy, and it is time for us to fight back. And we want you to join us in that at ACLJ.org or 877-989-2255. Also, don't forget, we've got great resources online at ACLJ.org. Our book, Rise of ISIS, as I said, available in bookstores everywhere. We'll be back with your calls in a moment.
There's a disturbing development occurring at our nation's colleges and universities. Jewish students are under attack on America's campuses. In California, Muslim students chant Allah Akbar at Jewish students at an open meeting. In Chicago, Jewish students need police protection from pro-Palestinian students. Nazi symbols are painted on a Jewish fraternity. Radical professors pledge to boycott Israel scholars and punish Jewish students. Our universities are overrun with anti-Israel propaganda. At the ACLJ, we're fighting for Jewish students on campus, winning cases and stopping boycotts. But it's time the Obama administration stepped up. It's time the Obama administration's Department of Education enforced the law to protect American Jews from violence, intimidation, and unlawful discrimination. Add your name to our petition now. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.
By the way, we've got a new program that we've launched on our, especially on Facebook. It's called a Sekulow Update, and it's where I give you a really quick update each week as to what the major topic is, and we put that up on our social media. We're going to be doing one of those, obviously, on this topic because it's such a huge situation and one that has us very concerned. And because I'd like we normally don't do it this way, but we're going to do it this way today. We're going to do it from the radio studio. So this is what a lot of you will be seeing on Facebook. And I just want to look in the camera and talk to you all and listen to our audience that's listening on radio. When we're talking about this discrimination on public school campuses, especially in colleges and public and private colleges, this anti-Semitism has reached a fevered pitch. We've got students that are being given poor grades or failing grades because they take a pro-Israel or pro-Jewish statement. Christian students that backing their friends that are Jewish on the Israel issue are also being harassed. You've got universities that are passing divestment schemes. They're called BDS, boycott, divest, and sanctions, that if there's an Israeli professor that's been invited on campus, that professor's not welcomed. If there's a university that maybe has, with their endowment, invested in companies that are based in Israel, well, that investment has to be divested immediately. And then they want penalties, sanctions put on colleges. So UC California, Davis, a number of these schools have passed these divestment schemes. And then we have Jewish students being harassed with swastikas painted on their fraternity houses sorority houses, Jewish students needing police protection to and from class, Jewish students being screamed at, Allahu Akbar, by other students. And who are the students that end up getting in disciplinary trouble? The Jewish students. Now, is that absurd? It really is. But I will tell you what we're doing at the ACLJ. We've dispatched a team of lawyers that are dedicated to this. We've already won a case in California, big one. And we just won one in Illinois on another major university. One in Illinois, it was the Jewish student that was up on disciplinary charges for simply defending herself from these antagonistic statements and actions of pro-Palestinian student groups. And we were able to win victoriously in that case. But again, it's the kind of fight. So I want you to be thinking about and praying for our lawyers as we work on these cases around the country and pray for these students. We've got a lot of calls coming in. Let's go right to the phones right now. Jordan, who's next?
Daniel in Nevada on line 3. Daniel, welcome to Sekulow Live.
Hi, Daniel. Welcome to the broadcast. You're on the air.
Okay, I had a question. If we say anything about it, any kind of thing that has to do with the Bible, it's considered a hate crime.
Yep. Well, here's the problem. And Jordan said this earlier. And I just said this in the statement. We realize who's being punished here. Not the students that are perpetrating the so-called hate speech, if you want to call it that, or taking these actions that are not speech at all, but are, trespassing, vandalism. Who are the ones being prosecuted, so to speak? The Jewish student groups, the Jewish student leaders, the Christian students that are backing these Jewish students. Jordan, that's where this thing has become so perverse.
And that's why I think we have to be very outspoken about this, call it out when it happens. It's something that's been bubbling at the college campus level. It's now reached this kind of breaking point, and it's up to us to talk about these issues, up to people to actually make sure everyone knows this is happening, that these aren't just peaceful protests that are going on, but it's intimidation and hate.
And we reached a point in the country where we should say, no, we're not going to tolerate this. And I'm happy to say 83,000, maybe 84,000 of you have signed online. Online already, actually, 83,151. If I had phone calls to that, we're marching towards 86,000. My goal here is to get 100,000 so that when Than's dealing with legislatures, when we're dealing with universities, we can say we're representing 100,000 people from all 50 states. And those of you watching by television right now, add your name to this petition as well. Join our radio audience on this who've responded so overwhelmingly great. We're going to urge you to join us in this fight. ACLJ.org to sign that petition for these Jewish students to end the discrimination, or 1-877-989-2255.
There's a disturbing development occurring at our nation's colleges and universities. Jewish students are under attack on America's campuses. In California, Muslim students chant Allah Akbar at Jewish students at an open meeting. In Chicago, Jewish students need police protection from pro-Palestinian students. Nazi symbols are painted on a Jewish fraternity. Radical professors pledge to boycott Israel scholars and punish Jewish students. Our universities are overrun with anti-Israel propaganda. At the ACLJ, we're fighting for Jewish students on campus, winning cases and stopping boycotts. But it's time the Obama administration stepped up. It's time the Obama administration's Department of Education enforced the law to protect American Jews from violence, intimidation, and unlawful discrimination. Add your name to our petition now. Call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or add your name online, aclj.org.